Tonight wasn't a birthday. It was a verdict. The estate stood glowing against the darkness like a palace built on secrets. Crystal chandeliers shimmered through towering windows. Black luxury cars lined the private driveway. Armed men in tailored suits guarded every entrance, not to protect a celebration, but to enforce a decision. Inside the grand hall, the most powerful men in the underworld sat in a half-circle beneath a ceiling painted with saints and martyrs. They called themselves the Council, kings without crowns, judges without mercy. Crime empires, ports, weapons routes, politicians, they controlled it all with a nod. And tonight, they were here for her. 18 years old. She stood at the top of the staircase in a silver dress chosen by someone else. Diamond earrings, family heirlooms. Her hair styled perfectly. To anyone watching from a distance, she looked like a princess stepping into adulthood. But up close? Her fingers were steady. Too steady. At the base of the staircase stood her father, the most feared man in the room. A crime lord whose name alone could stop wars before they started. Yet tonight he would not look at her. That was the first sign something was wrong. A glass tapped gently. The room fell silent. One of the elder council members rose from his seat, a man whose voice had sentenced rivals to death with less emotion than ordering wine. Tonight, he began, we honor tradition. Tradition. The word echoed like a loaded gun. For generations, unity has preserved our power. On the 18th birthday of a bloodline daughter, an alliance is sealed. A marriage chosen not by emotion, but by strategy. The guests were not surprised. They were waiting. Her name was called. She descended the staircase slowly, each step deliberate. Not hesitant. Not afraid. Just aware. For men stood across the hall. For heirs. Each one representing a different faction of the empire. The first, the cold strategist. Educated abroad. Calculated. Rumored to have orchestrated a hostile takeover before turning 25. The second, the enforcer. Broad-shouldered. Scar across his jaw. Loyal but violent. A man who believed fear was more reliable than respect. The third, charming. A public face. Political connections. Smiled as if he were already winning. The fourth, quiet. Watchful. Saying nothing. Absorbing everything. The silent observer. Her eyes passed over each of them without lingering. The elder continued. Tonight, the council will determine which of these 4 men will become your husband. This union will stabilize our territories and prevent misunderstandings. Prevent war. That was the unspoken truth. Her father finally lifted his eyes to hers. There was no warmth there. Only apology. And fear. The elder turned to her. Do you accept the will of the council? The entire empire seemed to hold its breath. If she refused, it would be seen as rebellion. If she agreed, she would become a political asset wrapped in silk. She smiled. It was soft. Controlled. Yes, she said calmly. I accept. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. But something about her tone unsettled the silent observer. His gaze sharpened slightly. Because she didn't sound defeated. She sounded prepared. Music resumed. Champagne glasses clinked. Conversations restarted. Business disguised as celebration. The 4 men approached one by one to greet her. The strategist kissed her hand and whispered, "You'll learn to appreciate efficiency." The enforcer leaned close. "I protect what belongs to me." The charming one grinned. "This could be very good for both of us." The silent observer said nothing. He simply looked at her, as if trying to solve a puzzle. And for a brief second, she looked back the same way. Across the room, 2 council members exchanged a glance. Tension. Calculation. Something deeper than marriage politics lingered beneath the surface. Because this vote wasn't just about alliance. It was about control. Later that night, when the guests began to leave and the chandeliers dimmed, she returned to her bedroom. The guards outside assumed she would cry. Every girl before her had. Instead, she locked the door, crossed the room, and knelt beside her fireplace. From behind a loose stone in the wall, she removed a small steel key. Calmly, she walked to her closet. Beneath a row of untouched designer shoes was a concealed panel. Inside, A hidden safe. She opened it without hesitation. No jewelry. No love letters. Inside were burner phones. Old financial ledgers. A flash drive. Photographs. And one picture she stared at longer than the rest. A woman with her same eyes. Smiling. Alive. Her mother. Officially declared dead in a car accident 8 years ago. Unofficially? Silenced after a private council meeting. Her fingers traced the edge of the photograph. They think tonight was their decision, she whispered. On one of the burner phones, a single unread message blinked. Unknown number. 3 words. The vote stands. Her expression didn't change. But she picked up a second phone, one no one knew existed, and typed a reply. Then we begin. Outside her door, footsteps passed by. Inside the walls of the empire, something had shifted. The council believed they had secured the future. They had no idea. They had just triggered it. Fade to black. In empires built on blood, ghosts are never truly buried. They are archived. Erased from photographs. Deleted from records. Whispered about only in locked rooms. But some ghosts learn how to whisper back. The morning after her 18th birthday, the estate was quiet, too quiet. News of the council's decree had already begun spreading through private channels. Syndicate leaders across the city were calculating what the marriage would mean for territory, power, and profit. To them, she was no longer a daughter. She was leverage. She sat alone in the breakfast room, sunlight cutting across the marble floor. A newspaper lay untouched beside her plate. The headline wasn't about her. It never would be, but a port explosion across the harbor. 3 dead. Officially, gas line malfunction. Unofficially, a warning shot. Across the table, her father read his coffee instead of drinking it. You should start preparing, he said without looking at her. The announcement will be public within the week. Public. As if the world would see a fairy tale instead of a strategic hostage exchange. She tilted her head slightly. Was my mother prepared? The question sliced through the room. For the first time, his hand froze. That subject is closed, he replied. Quote, that was the word the council used 8 years ago. Closed case. Closed coffin. Closed discussion. But nothing about that night had ever felt closed. She remembered the shouting behind office doors. The emergency council meeting. The way security cameras had malfunctioned for exactly 47 minutes. And the way her mother had kissed her forehead that morning, as if it were goodbye. Back in her bedroom, she locked the door and pulled out one of the burner phones from the safe. She dialed a memorized number. It rang twice. A distorted voice answered. You shouldn't be calling during daylight. They accelerated the timeline, she said calmly. The marriage vote is moving faster. Silence. Then, that means they're nervous. About me? No, the voice replied. About what your mother found. Her fingers tightened around the phone. For 8 years, she had pieced together fragments. Offshore accounts. Discrepancies in weapons shipments. Money siphoned from the empire into a shadow ledger no one publicly acknowledged. Her mother had discovered it first. And 3 days later, she was dead. Have you confirmed it? She asked. Yes. The vote that killed her was not unanimous. Her breathing slowed. Unanimous votes were the council's sacred rule. Total agreement meant shared guilt. Shared silence. If the vote wasn't unanimous, someone had opposed her mother's execution. Who voted no? She whispered. That's what they're trying to bury. A knock sounded at her bedroom door. 3 firm taps. She ended the call instantly and slid the phone beneath the mattress. When she opened the door, she wasn't surprised to see him. The silent observer. He stood in a tailored black suit, hands loosely clasped behind his back. His expression unreadable. You've been busy, he said quietly. Planning my wedding? She replied. His eyes flickered, almost amused. No. Planning something else. The hallway cameras blinked softly overhead. He leaned slightly closer. There was a leak last night, he murmured. Confidential council shipping routes reached a rival syndicate. She kept her expression neutral. And you think that was me? I think, he said carefully, that you're smarter than they believe. For a moment, neither of them moved. I don't want this marriage either, he added quietly. That was unexpected. Then refuse it. You know that's not how this works. It wasn't. Refusal meant elimination. Downstairs, raised voices echoed from her father's office. A council member had arrived unannounced. The silent observer straightened. They're watching you, he said. Every call. Every step. If you're playing a game, make sure you understand the board. And you, she asked softly. Which side are you on? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked away. By evening, the estate was buzzing. The port explosion had officially been labeled an accident, but internally, accusations were spreading. Someone had fed the rival syndicate sensitive information, and suspicion was moving quietly toward her father. Control your daughter. Or we will. That message arrived through private channels just after sunset. Her father stormed into her room without knocking. What are you doing? He demanded. Reading. You think this is a game? His voice was sharp, but beneath it, fear. I think, she replied calmly, that the council is unstable. His jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're interfering with. Then explain it, she said. Silence. He couldn't. Because explaining it meant admitting what happened to her mother wasn't an accident. Later that night, when the estate lights dimmed and security rotations changed, she unlocked the safe again. This time, she pulled out an old ledger, one her mother had hidden before the accident. Inside, numbers circled in red ink. Transfers. Secret holdings. And one signature repeated multiple times. Not her father's. Not any of the 4 heirs. But a council elder long believed to be neutral. Her phone vibrated again. Another encrypted message. 3 words. They suspect you. She stared at the photograph of her mother. They always did, she whispered. Outside, somewhere in the city, a second explosion echoed faintly in the distance. This one wasn't an accident. This one was closer. In the shadows of the Empire, alliances were shifting. The council believed they were containing instability. They didn't realize. They were feeding it. And somewhere within the inner circle of power, one man had once voted no. The question wasn't just who killed her mother. The real question was, who tried to save her? Fade to black. Power doesn't choose the strongest. It chooses the most useful. 3 nights after the port explosions, the council gathered again. No celebration this time. No champagne. No music. Just silence. The Empire was trembling beneath the surface. Rival factions were testing borders. Money was moving without authorization. And whispers, dangerous whispers, were circling her name. She stood once again in the center of the marble hall. This time, she wasn't dressed in silver. She wore black. Across from her, the 4 heirs waited. The strategist stood with measured patience. The enforcer looked restless, jaw tight. The charmer wore his usual polished smile. And the silent observer remained exactly what he had always been, unreadable. An elder council member rose. Recent instability requires immediate consolidation of power, he announced. The vote has been finalized. Her father's face was stone, but his knuckles were white. The chosen husband, the elder continued, will be. The pause. Deliberate. The son of House Virelli. The silent observer. The room shifted subtly. Not shock, but calculation. Of all 4, he was the least predictable. His family was powerful but politically neutral. Strategic. Quiet. Never the loudest voice in the room, yet never uninformed. He stepped forward without hesitation. No smile. No triumph. Just acceptance. The elder turned to her. The union will take place within 10 days. 10 days. 10 days to secure an empire. Or destroy it. Applause echoed lightly, forced, formal. She met his eyes. For a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Not romance. Recognition. Later that evening, she found him alone on the terrace overlooking the city skyline. The wind tugged lightly at the edge of her dress. You don't look surprised, she said. I'm not, he replied. You knew. Yes. That answer was too easy. How? She asked. Because my father pushed for it. There was a piece of honesty. Why? Because instability benefits someone, he said quietly. And it isn't the council. The city lights flickered below them like a restless constellation. You think I'm causing the instability, she said. I think, he corrected calmly, you're accelerating something that was already breaking. She studied him carefully. Did you know about my mother? The pause. Too long to be casual. I know what the official report says. That's not what I asked. His jaw tightened slightly. No, he said. But I know the vote wasn't clean. Her pulse steadied instead of racing. How? Because my father abstained. Her breath almost caught. Unanimous votes were sacred. Abstaining was a silent rebellion. Why would he do that? She asked. Because he believed killing her would fracture the empire. Killing her. He said it plainly. No accident. No euphemism. The truth hung between them like smoke. Before she could respond, a gunshot shattered the air. Both of them instinctively ducked. Chaos erupted inside the estate. Guards shouting. Footsteps pounding against marble. Another shot. Not random. Targeted. They rushed inside. In the main corridor, one of her father's senior advisors lay bleeding near the staircase. A bullet wound to the chest. Security scrambled to secure exits. Sniper, someone shouted. North wing. But something felt wrong. Too convenient. Too theatrical. Within minutes, the council elders were shouting accusations. This is retaliation for the leaks. Someone inside is feeding our enemies. And then, one of them turned toward her. She's destabilizing us. The word spread like fire. Destabilizing. The same word used 8 years ago. Her father stepped forward immediately. You will not accuse my daughter without proof. Proof? An elder snapped. Sensitive routes leaked hours before the port explosions. And now an assassination attempt the night we finalize her marriage. All eyes turned to her. Even the enforcer looked uncertain. The strategist observed silently. The charmer's smile had vanished. And the silent observer. He didn't look surprised. Security dragged in a man caught near the estate wall. Beaten. Bloodied. Terrified. Who sent you? The council demanded. The man hesitated. Then whispered a single word. Virelli. Every head turned toward her chosen husband. The room froze. His expression didn't change. That's convenient, he said calmly. The council erupted. Your family pushes the marriage, then stages an attack? This is a power grab. Her father looked caught between fury and calculation. She watched carefully. Too carefully. Because something wasn't aligning. If House Virelli wanted control, staging a sloppy assassination made no sense. They were known for precision, not spectacle. The silent observer leaned slightly toward her. This is misdirection, he whispered. Prove it, she replied softly. Security searched the captured man. In his jacket pocket, a folded payment receipt. With her personal insignia. The room went dead silent. It was perfect. Too perfect. Her father turned slowly toward her. You need to explain this. She looked at the insignia. A flawless replica. Someone had planted it. But the damage was done. The council elders conferred in hushed urgency. One of them finally spoke. Until this investigation concludes, the bride will remain under watch. Not protection. Surveillance. The silent observer's eyes darkened slightly. They're isolating you, he murmured. That was always the next move, she replied. As guards subtly repositioned around her, she realized something critical. The attack wasn't meant to kill anyone. It was meant to divide. To fracture trust between her and the only ally who might understand the board. And it worked. Because now, doubt had been planted. In the council. In her father. And even in him. As she was escorted away down the corridor, she caught one last glimpse of the silent observer. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. Behind closed doors, alliances were shifting. Somewhere within the council, someone was orchestrating moves 3 steps ahead. The question was no longer just who killed her mother. Now was, who was trying to frame her? Fade to black. Empires don't fall in a single night. Quietly. Violently. From the inside. By morning, the underworld was no longer whispering. It was choosing sides. The assassination attempt had done exactly what it was designed to do: fracture trust. House Heiress denied involvement. The council demanded loyalty pledges. Armed convoys began moving through territories that hadn't seen visible muscle in years. War wasn't declared, but it was preparing to breathe. She stood on the balcony of her room, now under protective watch. 2 guards posted outside. Cameras newly installed in the hallway. Not imprisonment. Containment. Below, black SUVs rolled into the estate courtyard, more council members arriving without invitation. Emergency session. Inside the grand chamber, the air felt heavier than before. This wasn't ritual. This was damage control. Her father stood at the head of the long table. The instability must end, one elder barked. Leaks. Explosions. Assassination attempts. And now suspicion between houses. Another elder's eyes drifted toward her. This began the night of the decree. There it was again. Blame wrapped politely. She remained silent. The silent observer stood across the room beside his father. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but distance had formed between them since the planted evidence. The strategist watched everyone. The enforcer looked ready for violence. The charmer avoided eye contact. The marriage proceeds as scheduled, an elder declared. Public unity will silence rumors. Public unity. Private distrust. Her father's jaw tightened. You believe forcing a wedding will stop a fracture already spreading through our territories? It will show strength. It will show desperation, he shot back. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. For the first time, the council wasn't aligned. And everyone felt it. Later that night, something unexpected happened. She left the estate. Not through the front gates. Through a service tunnel only 3 people knew about. Her mother once. The man waiting in a black sedan beyond the tunnel exit. The rival syndicate leader. He stepped out as she approached. Mid-40s. Controlled. Dangerous without spectacle. You're either very brave, he said softly, or very reckless. I'm very aware, she replied. The city lights reflected in his glasses as he studied her. You've accelerated the fracture, he said. Council members are shifting funds into private accounts. They don't trust each other anymore. That was the point. He raised an eyebrow. You leaked information carefully, he continued. Not enough to collapse operations. Just enough to expose paranoia. Fear reveals truth faster than loyalty, she said. He smiled faintly. And what truth are you hunting? My mother didn't die for money, she said quietly. She died because she discovered something structural. Something that threatened more than profits. He considered her words carefully. You're not trying to destroy the empire, he realized. No, she replied. I'm trying to expose the rot inside it. Before he could respond, headlights cut through the darkness. She turned. Her father stood at the end of the tunnel entrance. Alone. No guards. No council. Just him. The rival leader stepped back into the shadows without a word. Her father approached slowly. I wondered how long it would take you, he said quietly. She didn't deny it. You followed me. I removed your surveillance before you left, he replied. If they knew you were here, you wouldn't be walking back. Silence stretched between them. Why didn't you tell me the truth? She asked. His expression shifted, not into anger. Into regret. Because the truth would have made you a target sooner. She was already a target. Yes, he said sharply. Because she refused to stay silent. That landed. About what? She demanded. He hesitated. The council isn't what it used to be. Some members began diverting weapons into unauthorized channels. Selling access to unstable buyers. If exposed, it would have brought external forces down on all of us. So you voted to kill her to protect the empire? His voice lowered. I voted to protect you. Her breath faltered. The original proposal wasn't elimination, he continued. It was exile. But once the vote fractured, control slipped. Who pushed for her death? He looked away. Before he could answer, black vehicles roared into the street. Council security. Someone had tracked them. Her father stepped in front of her instinctively. From the vehicles emerged 3 elders. Not angry. Resolved. "You've compromised yourself," one said to her father. "Meeting rivals. Hiding information. Allowing instability to grow." "She is my daughter," he replied. "She is a liability." The word echoed like a sentence. Weapons weren't drawn. They didn't need to be. The elder's voice hardened. "The marriage will proceed in 48 hours. After that, corrective measures will be taken." Corrective measures. A polished term for removal. As the vehicles drove away, the night felt colder. Her father turned to her. "There was a 5th name on that ballot," he said quietly. She stilled. "Whose?" "Yours." The world seemed to narrow. The proposal was to eliminate you under the cover of alliance negotiations. A staged attack. Blame placed on a rival. The marriage was my counteroffer. Her pulse thundered, but her face remained steady. "So I was never meant to marry." "No. You were meant to disappear." The fracture wasn't about instability. It was about succession. Control. Fear of a bloodline that asked too many questions. She looked toward the dark estate in the distance. 48 hours. Not for a wedding. For survival. Inside the empire, the crack had widened into something irreversible. The council believed they were restoring order. They didn't realize. They had just confirmed the betrayal ran deeper than she imagined. And now she knew something critical. The marriage wasn't a cage. It was a battlefield. Fade to black. It's voted. Sometimes. Votes can be undone. 48 hours later, the estate no longer looked like a home. It looked like a fortress preparing for war. Armed guards lined the perimeter. Snipers stationed on rooftops. Black vehicles filled the courtyard like silent witnesses. Inside, chandeliers shimmered again. But this time, no one was pretending it was a celebration. The wedding would proceed. Because optics mattered. Because unity had to be performed, even if it was fake. She stood in front of a mirror, dressed in white. Not soft white. Sharp white. A statement. Her expression wasn't fearful. It was focused. Behind her reflection, the silent observer entered the room quietly. For a moment, neither spoke. "This is bigger than you thought," he said at last. "I know. My father has been locked inside the council chamber for an hour." She turned slowly. "Why?" "They're holding a secondary vote." Her pulse didn't spike. It slowed. "On what?" she asked. He held her gaze. "On whether this marriage is still necessary, or whether eliminating the source of instability is more efficient." There was no more coded language. No more polite threats. Her death was being debated while she stood in a wedding dress. "They won't get unanimity," she said calmly. "You're sure?" She stepped closer. "Was the original vote unanimous?" He froze. She reached into the hidden lining of her dress and pulled out a folded, aged document. The original voting ledger. He stared at it. "How did you get that?" "My mother hid it," she said softly. She knew they would erase her voice. She just didn't know I'd find it. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. The ceremony was beginning. Guests gathered below, political figures, syndicate leaders, faces that smiled too easily. Music rose. Ominous. As they descended the staircase together, whispers followed them like shadows. The strategist stood near the front row, calculating. The enforcer's eyes scanned the exits. The charmer forced a public grin. And at the altar, 3 council elders waited. But 2 were missing. Her father. And the most senior elder. The ceremony began. Words about unity. Loyalty. Legacy. She barely heard them. Because in the far corridor beyond the hall, a door slammed. Raised voices. A single gunshot. The music stopped. Screams rippled through the room. Guards rushed toward the council chamber. The silent observer didn't move. Neither did she. Because this wasn't chaos. This was culmination. Smoke began drifting faintly from the hallway. Security radios crackled with confusion. Chamber locked from inside. No response from 2 members. The elders at the altar looked shaken. Control was slipping in real time. She stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "Open the chamber," she said clearly. No one obeyed. So she raised her voice. "Open it." The silent observer stepped beside her. "Do it," he ordered the guards. The heavy doors were forced open. Inside the council chamber, glass shattered. One elder slumped over the table. Alive, barely. Her father stood across the room, blood on his sleeve. Not his own. And in the center of the table, a handgun. But that wasn't what drew every eye. It was the ledger lying open beside it. The original vote. Signatures visible. And one name circled in red. Heiress. Gasps filled the chamber as the truth rippled outward. The elimination proposal. Her removal disguised as strategic sacrifice. Her father looked at her, not with apology now. With urgency. They were about to reverse the marriage vote, he said, and reinstate the original motion. Murder, wrapped in tradition. The surviving elder coughed weakly. "She destabilized us," he rasped. "No," she said calmly. "You destabilized yourselves." Silence fell. All the secrets were no longer whispers. They were evidence. The silent observer stepped forward slowly. "My father abstained once," he said evenly. "He won't abstain again." The room felt like a loaded chamber. Outside, rival syndicate vehicles suddenly surrounded the estate gates. Engines rumbling. Waiting. The strategist stepped into the doorway. "External forces are mobilizing," he warned. The enforcer tightened his grip on his weapon. Everything was balancing on a single decision. The council elders still standing looked at one another. Power wasn't about morality. It was about survival. And survival meant choosing the side most likely to win. She stepped fully into the center of the chamber. Picked up the ledger. Closed it carefully. "You wanted a vote," she said quietly. "Let's have one." No screaming. No threats. Just calm authority. "Those who stand with the original motion," she continued, "stand now." No one moved. Those who believe this empire survives by eliminating its own blood. Her voice didn't waver. "Stand now." Still no movement. Outside, engines grew louder. Time was expiring. The silent observer looked at her. Not as a bride. Not as leverage. But as something else. A contender. Across the table, her father slowly stepped beside her. One by one. Chairs shifted. Footsteps moved. But we don't see clearly who stands where. We don't hear the final count. Because just as the tension peaks, the chamber doors slam shut. Locked from the inside. Gunshots echo. Smoke floods the hallway. And the screen cuts to black. In the underworld, votes decide fate. But sometimes, the one meant to be erased becomes the one holding the pen. Fade out.